We've now successfully passed over Passover, and we're ready to begin the period of time where we start to count the Omer. I remember as a child growing up in America, and I watched Sesame Street, and we had the count. You know, he would go 1, ha ha ha, 2, ha ha ha. That's not exactly what we do when we're counting the Omer. Counting the Omer is one of the mitzvahs of the Torah, and I'd like to tell you exactly what it's about. First of all, the details. We have to know how to fulfill it. For 49 days, immediately after the first festival of Pesach, every night, as we discussed in the lesson, Jewish time number 1, about the day-night cycle, the Jewish day begins at nighttime. Every night, which is the beginning of the day, we are going to gather together as a people, usually after we finish praying the Ma'ariv prayer, the nighttime prayer. We get together as a Jewish people, we make the bracha of the special blessing, which is for the Omer. We say, "Blessed are you, the Lord our God, King of the universe, who commanded us to count the Omer." And then we begin counting the Omer. What does it mean to count the Omer? Let me deal with the details once again. When we count the Omer, we mention two things. We mention the day that has passed, the amount of days that has passed, and we also mention the amount of weeks that have passed as well. What do I mean? On day 1 of the Omer, we're going to say, today is 1 day in the Omer. Only 1 day has passed, no weeks have passed. On day 7 of the Omer, we're going to say, today is 7 days in the Omer, which is 1 week. When 14 days have passed, we're going to count, today is 14 days in the Omer, which is 2 weeks. We mention both the days and the weeks. The reason for this is because the Torah tells us, "Usfartem lachem imachrat Shabbat." You must count for you after the festival. Miyom aviachem et Omer at nufa, from the day that you bring the sacrifice of the Omer, we'll speak about that in a minute, Sheba Shabbatot Tmimot Tiyena, it's supposed to constitute a period of time, 7 complete weeks, which means that we count 49 consecutive days. 49 consecutive days is 7 weeks. We count both the days and the weeks leading up to the festival of Shavuot, the festival of the giving of the Torah. Now, in addition, as I mentioned before, after making the bracha, we then count the day, and if enough days have passed, we count the weeks as well. On the first night, like all mitzvahs which come from at specific periods of time during the year, or that come occasionally, we also make a special blessing on the first night only, Shehecheyanu v'kiyemanu v'higiyanu l'zman hazeh, right? Blessed are you, the Lord our God, who has given us life and brought us to this day. It's a special blessing that about the life that we live and how God gives us the merit to achieve different goalposts during the year specifically. What is the Omer, you might be asking yourself at this time, that we're counting? Well, the truth is the Omer is two things. First and foremost, the Omer is a measurement. An Omer, we find, is a type of measurement that the Jews used when they were in the desert. For example, the man, the manna as it's called in English, which the Jews ate for 40 years during the desert, every person, when they would collect, no matter how much they would collect a lot, they would collect a little, they would find out when they got home that each had exactly 1 Omer's worth. Omer legulgolet, the Torah tells us, there was 1 Omer's worth per person. That's how, it's a measurement. But what was the importance of this measurement? It refers to a measurement which was necessary as a sacrifice during this time. During this time, on the morning of Pesach Day, the first festival day of Pesach, of Passover, in the morning a special sacrifice was given in the Beit HaMikdash, in our holy temple in Jerusalem, during which barley was collected and it was made into a meal and made into a type of bread, which was then sacrificed in the holy temple in Jerusalem. From the day that we gave that sacrifice, the Torah tells us we are now supposed to start counting, and once that day has gone by, absolutely, like we said before, then we start counting the days from that sacrifice until the next sacrifice we're going to give, which was called the Shtei HaLechem, the 2 loaves of bread, which were made out of wheat as opposed to barley, that were brought during Shavuos. Now, there is an idea which can be mentioned here. On the one hand, we start out with barley. Barley, our sages tell us, really was animal food. It was, even though the sacrifice that was brought was animal food, we count up to the days when we give the next sacrifice, which not only is not animal food, it's made out of wheat. Wheat is made for human consumption. in the eyes of our sages. It's not only wheat, but we make 2 big loaves of bread, bread being the summation of an entire process, which is the human effect in making bread on the grains that God made grow in the ground. There's an entire idea which can be made to understand here, that the process of going through the Omer, the counting the Omer, is a process of transformation, it's a process of change, it's a process of growth and building. That we build from the lowly animal food to something which is refined flour, from which we make, not the white flour stuff, but refined, meaning that we take it and we make it something better, and then we bake it into these bread, which is the summation of an entire process. We take ourselves during this period of time of the Omer to build ourselves up until we are worthy of accepting the Torah on Shavuot, the festival of the giving of the Torah. However, in addition to this time, even though it's a time of great expectancy, it's a time where we're building ourselves, we're growing, it's also a time of great sorrow. What happened? The Gemara in Tractate Yevamos on page 60b records that during this period of time, 24,000 students, the 24,000 students of the great sage Rabbi Akiva, were killed during a plague. The Gemara refers to them not as 24,000 students, but as 12,000 pairs, because a person is not supposed to learn Torah by himself, he's supposed to learn it together with a buddy, with a partner. Despite that fact, during this period of time, 12,000 pairs of students, 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva, passed away in this short period of time. Now, this was a tremendous tragedy for the Jewish people. Rabbi Akiva himself lived in the times of the Roman occupation. And because of all the enactments that were made against the Jewish people during this time, they really turned towards the great sages of the time in order to see their future. They expected them to be the future Torah teachers. They expected them to teach their children, the next generation, what it means to be Jews. And here it was, the greatest yeshiva, basically, the greatest single amount of people learning Torah in one place, where they were all looking upon for the future. All of a sudden, everyone was decimated. Everyone was gone. What a tremendous, tremendous sorrow for the Jewish people. It's because of this tremendous sorrow that we took upon ourselves that during this period of time, called the Omer, from the beginning of the Omer until the middle, until Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day. Lag is the gematria, the numerology of 33. During the 33rd day of the Omer, the Gemara tells us that the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. And therefore, from that point of time and on, the feeling, the sorrow of the time lessens. But from the beginning of the Omer until the 33rd day of the Omer, it has been Jewish practice since then not to get married during this period of time. This doesn't mean that you can't have an engagement. Engagement is fine, that's not getting married. But to actually go through with it, the marriage during this period of time is not something that we do. That's our custom since then. In addition, as an aside, during this period of time, there are many other tragedies that happened to the Jewish people in various communities around mostly among the Ashkenazim, but also among the Sephardim. Because of these great tragedies that happened during this period, we made this time even more severe. We made it more like a period of avelus, of mourning. We accepted upon ourselves, in addition to not getting married, also that we shouldn't cut our hair, that we shouldn't shave during this period of time. The most accepted practice for this is from the beginning of the Omer also until the 33rd day. And in addition, we don't buy or wear new clothes during this period of time as a sign of mourning. Now, having said that, we have to ask ourselves the question, why did this happen? 24,000, the hope of Israel, 24,000 students, for them to pass away during this period of time. What happened? What was going on? Well, it's a question that the Talmud itself asks as well. And the answer that the Talmud gives us is the following thing. Mipnei shelo nahagu kavod ze bazeh. That they didn't treat each other with the amount of respect that they were supposed to. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean that they would treat each other totally with disregard? I mean, that they would come up and they would say, it's like, who are you? You're going to ask me a question, get out of my face. Does this mean that the older students would have their spectacles on the end of their nose and they would look down at the younger students and say, yes, you, what? No, that's not talking about that. Does it mean that they were like the college professors when they disagree with each other? They speak about my esteemed colleague who happens to say. No, that wasn't the case. We're talking about great, great individuals here, 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. Now, why specifically the students of Rabbi Akiva? This is an important issue as well. Rabbi Akiva was famed. It wasn't his anthem and it wasn't his mantra, but he was famed for having said that one of the mitzvahs of the Torah, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that we should love our fellow Jew as ourselves, is a klal gadol b'Torah. It's one of the great rules of the Torah. Now, this, like I said, this isn't an anthem and this isn't a mantra, although it should be repeated to oneself constantly, because sometimes we feel that we don't need to treat our fellow Jews with the proper respect that they should. Even though we should take it as a mantra, that's not what Rabbi Akiva meant. According to Rabbi Akiva, the importance of this mitzvah sometimes takes precedence over other mitzvahs as well. Due to the importance of this mitzvah, according to Rabbi Akiva, his students should have excelled at keeping it. Now, how does one keep the mitzvah? Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. There are two ways to keep this mitzvah, our sages tell us. First and foremost is the simple understanding. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You are to love your fellow Jew as yourself. What does that mean? That means that in the financial realm, in the personal realm, in the familiar or communal realm, I am supposed to treat you with respect. I'm supposed to show you that you're a Jew and I love you. That is the way that we're supposed to treat our fellow Jews. In addition, our sages tell us that if I see that, for example, a financial loss is going to come to a friend of mine, and I recognize it ahead of time, but he doesn't, and I can therefore go warn him and help him, I have to do that. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, you should love your fellow Jew like yourself. That is one thing. However, there's an inverse side to the mitzvah as well, which I can elucidate with the following story. The Gemara in Shabbos, Tractate Shabbos, on page Lamed 30b, tells us, among many stories, of how many certain converts that came to both Shammai and Hillel, the great sages of their time, in order to convert. One of the stories that's mentioned there is that there was a certain convert that came to both Shammai and Hillel and told them that I wish to be a convert. However, he said to both of them, I will do it only on one stipulation, on one condition, that you teach me the entire Torah while standing on one foot. So when Shammai heard this guy, he kicked him out. He says, listen, I don't need you. I don't need your Tanaim. The Jewish people certainly don't need you. If you want to make fun of the whole issue, then get out of my face. Hillel, however, accepted him. Hillel felt that this guy was a sincere convert, and therefore, through proper training, he could get through to him. So fine. So he said, you know what? I'm going to accept you as a convert. Come back tomorrow. The next day, the guy comes back, and he sits down in his chair, and he says, Rebbe, let me have it. So what does Hillel do? He stood on one foot, and he says, that which is hateful to you, don't do to your friend. That's the entire Torah itself. The rest is its details. Go and learn the details. The convert heard this, and he accepted it. So the question that we ask in understanding this piece of Gemara, as we do whenever we come across a Gemara which is not fully understood, we have to ask ourselves, what was the question and what was the answer? So our great Talmudic sage Rashi, Rab Shlomo ben Yitzchaki, says the following. He says that there are two ways of understanding the question and the answer. When Hillel answered, that which is hateful to your friend, who's your friend? So in the first explanation, Rashi tells us that your friend is God. The rule of thumb, if you want to have a rule of thumb to understand the entire Torah itself in a nutshell, he says, is that which you hate, don't do to your friend. Rashi says, what does that mean? If you understand that you don't want other people to do things to you that you hate, then understand that when God tells you, I don't like this and I don't like that, but I do like this and I do like that, you should do them as well. You follow the positive commandments, the things that God likes, and you stay away from the negative commandments, those things that God doesn't like. That's a rule which encompasses the entire Torah itself. That's the first explanation. The second explanation, says Rashi, who is your friend? He's your friend. In other words, the non-Jew, the convert, came along and he wanted to ask a rule to understand the entire side of Torah which deals with the issues of man between his fellow man. And to that Hillel said, no problem, I have the perfect solution. Just remember this rule of thumb. That which you don't like, don't do to your friend. That's the rule of thumb. All of the mitzvahs, all of the commandments which pertain to one man and his fellow man can be included in that one condition. That's the entire Torah. Learn its details. And that's what he did. So we understand as well that in order to fulfill this mitzvah, you also have to recognize the inverse of what it means. Not only that which you love, but also that which you hate, don't do to your fellow Jew. Now, in some reason, in some level, the students of Rabbi Akiva just didn't keep that issue. And it was because of the great people that they were, because they were not little people. They were great and tremendous sages. They were the hope of Israel for the future. Therefore, they were held to a different standard, and therefore, because they were not fitting the bill, and they were making, for whatever reasons, these tremendous mistakes, and they weren't working on themselves to the level that they were supposed to, therefore God said it's time to level the playing field. It's time to make room for the new. Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara tells us that despite this tremendous setback of 24,000 students, his life's work, despite all of the death that went on, and he certainly had to have felt a little bit responsible for that, he went ahead and he took 5 new students. Among those 5 new students, the students were Rabbi Judah, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir, one of which was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the famous sage Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He took another 2 students, Rabbi Nehemiah and Rabbi Yossi. Those were his 5 students through which he rebuilt the entire Jewish continuation, the continuation of the future of the oral Torah. In any case, it was during this period of time that they passed away because they didn't realize how much they really have to respect their fellow Jews. And therefore, this is certainly a time when we're supposed to be working on that aspect of our lives. How well do I treat my fellow Jews? How much respect do I give to the guy that sits next to me in the shul? You know, here I am, I come to pray, and there's a guy sitting next to me. How often do I treat him with the respect that I would like? How often do I say, hi, how you doing? Nice to know you, I'm your neighbor. Think about it. It's a tremendous, tremendous thing. In any case, in addition to that, on Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer, getting back to our original topic, another thing that happened to the Jewish people was the sage Rabbi Shimon passed away at a very old age. It's to this day that the Jewish people commemorate his yahrzeit, the day of his death, by having a tremendous festival at the mountain of Meron here in Israel up north. There are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Jews that come from all over the world to celebrate Lag BaOmer at Meron, the burial site of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the student of Rabbi Akiva. And it's such a tremendous, tremendous thing to see all of the various peoples of Am Yisrael getting together, the nation of Israel. We all get together in order to celebrate the true meaning of life, the life of a great and holy Tana who gave such tremendous holiness and benefit to the world. So it is my blessing to you that you utilize this time. Every night is a new night. We can fulfill a commandment anew for every single night by counting the days of the Omer. If you forget one day, however, for whatever reason it slipped your mind, one day you forgot to count, you can still keep counting. Just from that day on, you can no longer make a blessing over the counting. Having said that, remember, this is a time which we build ourselves, both spiritually and build ourselves into the people that we can become. And most especially, this is a time where we have to work on our relations between ourselves and our fellow man. How we can improve them, how we can make this great Jewish people into the close-knit, loving unit that it's supposed to be. My blessing to you. We utilize this time well, and I'll see you at a different time.